Thank you for tuning into the podcast of Eden Church NJ, where we take care of Jersey because Jesus loves Jersey. Hit the follow button, share this episode with a friend, and I'll see you soon. Let's get into it. If there's one thing Charlie Kirk no longer being with us proves, it is that we have created a political tornado. I've been talking about this for the better part of a year. A pastor in New Jersey who has seen a lot of elections in the last year. Actually, we just had one even in our city that we're in, and I have just seen a lot of political tornadoes. And this is not the end of the political tornado and violence unless we can really just take a good look at ourselves and what we are producing and how we can stop it. So I want to walk through two things I think we need to be thinking about so that we can stop this. Because here's the thing, actual tornadoes, I know it's just an analogy, but actual tornadoes are almost indigenous to America. Did you know this? 1,200 tornadoes happen in America every year, just about. And that is way more than the number 2 country in the world where tornadoes occur. But it's because, America is this massive land that has a lot of different terrain in it. And it creates a lot of different atmospheres and atmospheric pressure. And when it collides in certain areas of the country, it creates really strong tornadoes that can wreak havoc. But the thing is that there are certain conditions that a tornado runs into where it can no longer thrive. And we need to be people who, when that political tornado comes to our doorstep, it has found conditions where it no longer thrives and doesn't spin up into violence. Acts 11:26, it says they were first called Christians at Antioch. And I say that because Christianity was first coined as a political term. There were these people who were under a certain king in an area. And then here come these Christians who are talking about, we follow King Jesus. We don't know about the king you talking about. We follow this other worldly king. We are following another order. And so they needed a term to identify what that meant in the political world, that you don't follow our king, you follow some other worldly king. Sure, we'll call you Christian. You said his name is Christ. Great, we'll call you Christians, politically, socio-politically. And that's important because I think it goes to, without even saying, but we need to say it, that the idea of religion and Christianity holds a space in our political discourse today, rightfully so, and I think it's needed. What I think is not needed in this moment is pastors and other Christians hopping online today and right now in the heat of Charlie Kirk being gone and making it only about religion. I think that is a gross oversimplification that is honestly dishonoring to what has happened to him. I should also say, if you can't just unequivocally state that what has happened to Charlie is wrong and has absolutely no place in our current public discourse, you don't need to listen to the rest of what I'm getting ready to say, because we disagree on enough. What has happened to him is wrong, and be sure that we are praying for his family, but I don't need to performatively tell you all that right now. Anyway, so there are a couple different ways that we need to be focusing if we're going to stop this political tornado. There are 2 ways of thinking in our current political discourse that create enough tension that will always bubble up into violence. And here are 2 ways I know people like me tend to think that are just not helpful. I've coined them this. 1, religious nationalism. Have you heard this term? Religious nationalism. And the number 2 way of thinking is therapeutic honor culture. Again, that's religious nationalism and then therapeutic honor culture. So religious nationalism can be defined as religion misused for the service of politics. And therapeutic honor culture can be defined as moralism misused for the service of power. So what religious nationalism looks like is creating a political ideology. You believe in gun rights, or you believe in that we need more gun laws, whichever that might be. And you find a way, that's just what you believe. It may be because of your experiences and your convictions or whatever, your atmosphere where you live, people tend to think the same way. And then instead of just saying, this is what I think because of who I am, you find a way to undergird your argument with a sacred ideology, the closest sacred ideology to you, which in America typically happens to be Christianity. And so what happens is then no one can argue with you anymore. You've created an ideology that is untouchable, even if you had to twist some of your holy scriptures to get there. And that's just a super toxic way to operate in socio-political discourse, because now if you come against me, you're not just coming against me, you're coming against God himself. And what you've effectively done is you put God on your side, which we see in the Bible does not happen. The angel of God was asked, whose side are you on? And his answer was no. It's like, what? No. Yeah, no. Are you on God's side? That's the question. And I think too many times we try to drag God onto our side and make him say all sorts of things that he just does not say. And anyway, I'll leave that there. The other one is therapeutic honor culture, which is just super, doesn't have to be religious at all, but it is a way that people tend to operate where we create a moral high ground, whatever that might be. Hey, you're on the wrong side of history on this thing. And now I'm higher than you morality wise. And even now I get to determine how acceptable you are in certain spaces. So if you don't believe like I do on LGBTQIA plus issues or on gun rights or on abortion or you name it, polarizing issue, you are not just wrong, you're unacceptable and you're the enemy. And I think that is the essence of both of these things, is that it makes it as if we are wrestling against flesh and blood and not principalities. It makes flesh and blood the enemy and allows for the enemy to walk in disguise, because now we're attacking each other rather than the actual enemy. We've made ourselves the enemy of each other when we think this way, because again, I have a moral high ground and I'm not just right, I'm better than you. And you're not just wrong, you are. And that's just tiring. Not only is it tiring, it's extremely dangerous. And so I think when we acknowledge these ways of thinking, and not only acknowledge them, but acknowledge them as wrong, and not only acknowledge them as wrong, but acknowledge them as dangerous, I think we are on our way to creating the conditions where political tornadoes do not thrive when they hit our doorstep. And I think we need to be people who do not allow political tornadoes to thrive when they come to us. We need to be those kind of people. We need to be the kind of people in Matthew 4 when Jesus was tempted by Satan in the wilderness and Satan said, you can have all of this power, right? You can misuse you can misuse your power. You can misuse your morality. You can misuse the religion that's being started through you and just grab a hold of all the power, socio-political power that's available to you right here. Look at this kingdom. It can be yours. We need to take the heart of Jesus that looks at that and says, no, I will not have that thing. But I think we have way too many people being shown all of that and going, that actually sounds pretty good. I'm going to grab a hold of that right there, right now. And I'm going to use whatever means. I'm going to undergird it with a sacred ideology, or I'm going to prop myself up as a morally higher, superior person, as long as it means I can actually grab a hold of that power. We need to be people who say no.